Hi guys, Idris here. Welcome back to the Maven Space Challenge video 3, and of course in the last two videos we looked at the description of the challenge and then we extracted our data, transformed, we loaded in Power BI, and we were able to come up with a couple of DAX measures and also some visuals. So today we'll just continue with the visualization and also see how far we can go. The last time we stopped here, and I said today we'll be looking at the comparison between the 2021 and 2022 missions, right? Space missions. So let's just go straight up to that. Now what I just want us to do is let's look at the number of space missions. So this is like all, and then we could like filter this to just a particular year, which is like 2022, right? So if I just change this to basic filter, I can select any year I want. So in this case I want 2022. So we can see we have 93 missions for 2022. So let me just copy this and paste it again. So I'm going to change this from 2022 to 2021. Okay, now you will see that in 2021 we had 157, and then in 2022 already we have 93. But it will be fair to compare them directly, because here if we take a look at our data, we would realize that in 2021 of course we have all the months represented, but in 2022 we only have it until August, I think. Yeah, so we can see that in 2022 we only have it until July, right? So but for 2021 we have it till the end, that's till December. So it will be an unfair comparison to look at the number of missions in both years. So we have to bear this in mind, right? What I did eventually was to like create this again and then try to, now we know that this ends in July, right? So what I'm going to do here for this one is to filter this. So I don't want all the years, so I'm just going to bring in the date. So under my date here, you can actually select, click on the date and then go to date hierarchy, and then you can bring in the month here. So from the date, I know we didn't create a month column separately, but because I didn't change the time intelligence settings, so this date became our date table automatically, so we could like get month from it. So I now selected January, February, March, April, May, June, and July. Okay, so now it is fair to compare them. So we can actually see that 2022 is doing better than 2021 already, because this time last year we only had 81 missions, but now in 2022, at least according to this data and being in July, we have already surpassed this 81. So this is how the analysis works. So if I had just stopped here, it would be a biased analysis. Of course, it's not that it's wrong, but according to the data, we have to investigate deeper to see if our comparison or our base for comparison is being fair. So rather than having all of this way, I decided to use KPIs. So I'm going to show you how to do that right now. So what we have here, of course, is the count of missions, and then we add like the count for the previous year. Okay, so there is a function, a DAX function, a time intelligence function that can help us with that. Just going to create it now. So I'm going to right click on this measures table, and then I'm going to create a new measure. So the measure will be called previous year. So why I'm doing this is because it's going to be a bit dynamic, right? Of course, I could have left it the way we have it and try to do something static, but creating a time intelligence function will ensure that it's going to recreate itself even when we go into another year. For instance, you go into 2023, which is the year I'm making this video. You don't need to come over here again and try to change anything. It will automatically do it itself. So it will just take note of the previous year, which will now be 2022, and try to look at the number of missions and so on. So previous year equals to, I'm going to use calculate. Of course, if you have not used any time intelligence function, it's not a problem. You can always read it up, just check it on Google, but of course I would explain what's going on in this one. So we want to calculate the missions count. By now we already know that this is the missions count measure. Now I don't just want missions count, I want the count for the previous year. So now what I'm going to do is to say filter, because the next thing here, even though it's optional, is we can have a filter. right? So I'm going to filter these using the date in time intelligence function, and the one I'm going to use for previous year will be date add, this one. So if you check the meaning, it says that moves the given set of dates by specified interval. So I don't want to calculate the mission for this year. I want to calculate the mission for last year, the previous year. That's what it's going to do. So if we're in 2023 and you summon this function, it's not going to count for 2023, it's going to count for 2022. So that's how it works. So you're going to see it, I'm going to show you. So now the date is going to be the date in our space missions table. Date, let me have this date, and then we'll have the number of intervals. So we actually want to look at it 1 year ago. So the number of intervals will be, because we are looking backward, which is a year ago, is going to be -1. We are just looking at 1 year. And then the next thing is interval. So we have day, month, quarter, year. We already know that we are looking for 1 year ago. So it's going to be year. So if I was actually doing for month, then it would have been month, year. Just 1 month. If I was doing for 6 months, for instance, this one will be -6 and year will be what? Month. You guessed that right. So I'm just going to close that. That's how you use that date add function. And then I click on enter. So how does this work? Let me show you. So now if I click on any blank space here and I bring in my table here, and then I bring in my date, I try to change this to just a normal date. I don't want, or let me just change this to the year. I don't want the month, I don't want the day, I don't want the quarter. So I just want the year. Okay. Now, if I bring in the number of missions, we can see that it is what we expect. Now, see what happens when I bring in the previous year. So now, as soon as I bring in the previous year, let me start from the beginning. You will notice that the first one is blank, right? So because, of course, we don't have a previous year in this data for 1957. It all started from 1957. So now if you go to 1958, you will notice that the value for previous year is this one, which is that of 1957. And then and so on. If you go to 1959, you would notice that the value for the previous year for 1959 is the value for 1958, which is 28, and so on and so forth till the very end. So if you actually take a look at it, you will see that in 2022, the missions count is 93, but the previous year is 1957, which is the first thing that we did. So I actually want us to use this as a KPI, and that's why I created it. So how do we use it as a KPI? Let me just bring it by the side. I'm going to delete very soon, so I just wanted to see. Now, how does a KPI work? This is a KPI card. Things that you need to add in. The first one is the value, and the value, of course, is the missions count, because I want to look at the missions count that we are currently having. And then the target is, in this case, will be the previous year. I want to see how we are doing against previous year. So that's the target. So current year is the value I want to check against the previous year, which is the target, right? So I'm going to bring in this previous year that I created. Now you can see it's going to the target. And now the next thing I'm going to add is the trend axis. So trend is like the year or the date. So I'm just going to bring in the year, this one, this date, and then the year. So you can see that KPI has given us the information that these two would give us, and even more information talking about the percentage difference. So what's going on here is that this is our value at the current year, 93, and then our goal is 157, which is the value for last year. So you can actually see this trend on the ground, which is like the trend for each year. If you look at the trend and relate it with this, you will see that they are the same thing, because we are looking at the trend by year. You can see it's exactly the same thing. This is just more of an area chart in the background. Okay, so this is the chart for this. So instead of having these two, I will just use this one instead. It saves me more space, and this looks even much better. And I can even have the percentage decrease. Now, why is it red? It is red because the value is not up to the goal. The goal is actually 157, and we are actually hitting 93, which tells you that it is a, so in case of like, if it's like a revenue, for instance, that you are visualizing, you would see that we have a loss here once it is red if you don't hit the target. So I'm just going to delete this now. Now, the second thing we want to do is to, don't forget, we actually have two visuals we need to create, one for this which is like the full year, and this one, which is like the month that we have. Now I'm just going to duplicate this so you can see what I want to do now. I can just add a filter for month to this so that we can get this, because what we actually did here was to add the filter. If you remember, we added the filter for January to July. So I could do that here as well. And once I had this month filter from date, I add it to my filter. I can select January, February, March, April, May, June, July. And then you can see now we have 93, and then we have the missions count 81. And now you can see it is green. Okay, so that tells you that, you know, the missions count as at this time last year, as far as this data is concerned, is 81, and then right now we have 93. Now, does this make sense? Yes, but it can be better, because what we are doing now, it's a bit static. So what happens when we get data, for instance, for August? As a developer, you wouldn't want to come every month to make this change now hard for August. It really does not make sense, right? There are a number of times it's applicable here, but I'm only showing you this one time just to let you know that you can actually make your measures more dynamic, right? So that you won't have to be doing the manual thing all the time. So let me show you how we can do that. So let me delete this, guys. Now, I didn't find a direct approach yet. I was checking online when I was doing it. I don't know if there will be a better way of, I believe there's always a better way to do things anyway, but this is just how I did mine to make it more dynamic, right? So I'm going to create a new measure again, and I'm going to call that measure same period last year, because what we actually want to do is, if you know this function in Power BI, you agree with me that it's the same, but I couldn't just like filter out that time that we need. Perhaps if anyone has any idea, you are following the video and you have an answer to this, it would be nice if you could share in the comments. But this is how I did it. So same period last year, I would just call it same period last year. So equals to, so what I was able to come up with eventually was to create a variable, and I could call that variable month. Okay, and that month is equals to the month of the maximum. I'm going to explain what's going on of the maximum date in our table. Okay, so let me explain what I actually want to do. Instead of having to click the month that you want, right, when you add your data, so I want to first check for the maximum date, because if you check, let me just copy this so I can show you what I want to show you now. Because if you check our data, you would see that as the year keeps increasing, right, the data that we have, so this now is still July, right? So the month that we need to access here belongs to the month of the year that is highest. Right, so because if I add 2023 data to this now, and let's say 2023 data to April, for instance, it means that I am now going to be looking at January to April. So how did I come up with April? Why not July? So I came up with April because 2023 is now the highest year, and for that highest year, the maximum month that we have according to our data is April. That's the logic, and that's what we are going to like try to recreate with this DAX. So first, I try to look for the maximum date. So maximum date will return the maximum date I have in my table, and then I ask for the month. So in this case, the maximum date is 2022, whatever date that we had there in 2022, and then the month for that in this case will be July. So you know that this variable is returning July, but not July as a July, but July as a number. That's number 7, because this month function returns a number that correspond to that month. So if it's January, it returns 1. If it's February, it returns 2, and so on. So this one is going to return 7. So what I want to do now is to tell it to return. So this function will return calculate the previous year. So literally we want previous year, but not all previous year. We want previous year that corresponds with the period that we have right now in our data. That's what we want. So I'm going to filter this previous year, and then I'm going to say where the month, so the month of the date, wherever the month of the date is less than or equal to this month that we created here. So I would explain what's going on there as well. this shouldn't be there. Okay, let me take this off. What's going on here is that I don't just want all the previous years. I want the previous years. I'm filtering it based on this, where the month of the date. So again, it's going to check the month of this date. This is now going to take a filter context. So it's going to check each of the records. So it's going to check the month first. Once it gets the month, it will now look at where the month is less than or equals to this month that we have created here. So that way, if the maximum month for 2022 in our case now is July, and this number already returned 7, so it's going to check any month that is less than or equals to 7. So 1 will be January, 2 will be February, 3 will be March, 4 will be April, 5 will be May, June will be 6, and then July will be 7. So it's less than and equal to, so it's inclusive. So August, which is definitely not less than or equals to 7, will not be included in this. So once I create that, that's actually what we have. So now I'm going to just duplicate this one, copy and paste it, and now I'm going to clear this one that we did manually, so we can see that we have this again. So now I'm going to take off this previous year that I was using, and then I'm going to use this same period last year instead. So if I use same period last year, you can see that we have exactly what we have here. Okay, and of course you know the difference now. The difference is that this, it's manual. You have to keep updating by coming over here, but this, I tell you, once you update your data, all you need to do is refresh, and it will pick up the next month and year and all of that. So I assume that we have beginners here, so I guess it's already a whole lot. So I will just end this video here, and then we can like continue. If you have any questions, if you need further guide or further resources that can help you, I encourage you to check online, even Microsoft blogs, to read more on time intelligence functions. They are really useful tool in analytics, especially if you're in business or finance and all of this. You get to do like year over year, month over month, rolling date, and all of these things. So it's something that you should really learn if you are not very versed with data and time intelligence functions. So until next time, where we'll continue with the analysis, I hope you have a good time and see you.